Welcome to the Southeastern Ford Team Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Lee, alongside Blake Lovell, my co-host. And we've got a special guest today. He is Drew Butler. If you're an SEC fan, you know him because he played at Georgia where he punted. Also punted in the NFL with the Steelers and the Cardinals. He now runs the collegiate division at Icon Sports. Drew, talk to us about what you do and tell us a little bit about why you're here today.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Thanks for having me on. As you just mentioned, played at Georgia, played in the NFL for the Steelers and Cardinals. I was a punter. I'm also in the podcast game. Aaron Murray, who's the SEC's all-time leading passer in yardage and touchdowns, is my co-host on Punt and Pass. We talk SEC and college football weekly during the season, so go check us out there. And I love staying involved with football. I love staying involved with college sports. I do some consulting, and I have had a really keen interest on the name, image, and likeness rule change that's coming down the pipe. Obviously, this was announced about 18 to 24 months ago. The NCAA said they were going to change the rule in January of 2021. They have since punted on that, as probably most people could expect them to have done. Clearly, 2020 was an unprecedented year with COVID, and a lot of stuff got pushed back, but spoke with the founder and CEO of a software company called Icon Source. His name's Chase Garrett. Chase ran Red Bull's athlete marketing program for 7 years, so he is well-versed in sports marketing. He understands how to structure deals for athletes, how to bring brands and endorsement opportunities to athletes, and his platform, which is a digital marketplace to connect athletes with brands, really kind of blew me away. And I reached out to Chase and I said, hey, man, have you thought about the implementation for this at the collegiate level? This was in June of 2020. No sports were going on. Obviously, no sports marketing was going on. And he reached back out to me and said, thanks so much for your interest. Kind of crazy timing. We're actually building out our collegiate platform right now because there was nothing going on. So got really close with Chase, learned a lot about Icon Source and what they were doing. And at the beginning of this year, they brought me on to run their collegiate division. So that's what I'm doing now. I am the vice president of collegiate for Icon Source. I am out right now speaking with student athletes, athletic administrators, athletic directors, compliance offices to figure out how they are going to best position their student athletes to capitalize on their name, image, and likeness. And that's exactly what we will do. We will provide the common platform for all student athletes to engage with brands and realize their name, image, and likeness.
Drew, I want to talk about Icon Source and what it is doing to kind of anticipate what's ahead, but I don't think we can have that conversation until we talk about the Supreme Court last week and its discussion of a lot of topics related to this. So tell folks what happened last week and maybe some takeaways that you had from those conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. The Alston versus the NCAA case, I believe, is the first case that the Supreme Court has heard involving the NCAA since the early 1980s. And for everybody listening, if you're following the headlines or you've heard about what this case has to deal with, it does not have to do with name, image, and likeness. It has nothing to do with student athletes being able to make money on their name, image, and likeness. It has everything to do with, can the NCAA cap what universities can pay for from an educational compensation, meaning full scholarships? Are the value of scholarships rising yearly? Can universities provide laptops and iPads as part of those scholarships, right? What allows the NCAA to say, nope, we have a hard stop at this dollar amount for student athletes for their educational compensation? When you're talking about a free market, you're understanding these coaches are getting paid $10+ million a year. If you're talking about Nick Saban, the average is probably around $3 to $5 million a year. And that's just going to continue to grow. So why should there be a cap on student athletes for what they are able to be compensated from an educational perspective? I thought the arguments were really interesting. The Supreme Court did a great job of asking both sides of the questions, essentially saying, hey, NCAA, what gives you the right to full stop at a certain dollar amount? But where is the end game? I think that was the most important question. Where do you stop if you just blow the top off this thing? There has to be some sort of guidelines to maintain amateurism, right? Amateurism is a word that gets thrown around a lot right now. But clearly, collegiate sports is amateurism. Okay, so that is obviously a component that makes it so popular. But you can't just sit there and say student athletes can't make money off their name, image, and likeness, and we're going to cap their educational compensation. That's not fair in 2021, and I think the Supreme Court understands that. If they do rule in favor with Alston and side with the student athletes, that is just going to embolden the opportunities for student athletes to lean into making money off their name, image, and likeness. So they're two completely different things, but depending on how the Supreme Court rules this case, it will certainly create more momentum for name, image, and likeness to be next.
Well, goodness gracious, I've got a million questions, but where do you think this is going to head, say, in the next year and in the next 5 years? Because, look, I agree. We're talking two different things, right? I think that the kids can make money off this without the schools having to pay them. I mean, my goodness, you could take a player at Alabama or wherever, and they could get an endorsement at a car dealership or whatever for God knows what, right? So there's a lot of ways we can go with this, but where do you think pragmatically this is going to head, say, between now and the end of next school year, and what do you think things will look like 5 years from now?
Yeah, pragmatically, and I would advise all student athletes to take this approach, make the first step the right one. And I think that in and of itself, July 1st for some states already is allowing student athletes to make money off their name, image, and likeness. You said it. The key is that the university is not paying the student athlete. The money cannot flow through the university, because if it did, Title IX would come into effect. There would be plenty of conversations about inequities between revenue sports and non-revenue sports. So that's the opportunity for name, image, and likeness. Student athletes are representing themselves, and they're getting compensated off of their name, image, and likeness. Let's take that step now. Let's take that step by July 1st for all 50 states. You can build off of that. You can build in group rights, right? You can build in other things that student athletes are mentioning. I'm not so sure about breaking into endowment funds. I'm not so sure about healthcare for life. There are nearly 500,000 student athletes in the NCAA. You talk about the NFL Players Association, which I was a part of. There's only 1,900 members in the NFL Players Association, and those negotiations that deal with group rights and employee-employer relationships, man, they are tough and they are complicated. So take the right step now. Allow the student athletes to make money off their name, image, and likeness, which again is separate from the university. See how that goes, which I would assume is going to be a very positive way, and then build off of that. And that's where Icon Source provides a ton of value. We work separate of the universities, allowing them to utilize our platform, giving them complete transparency to see all the deal flow, all the communication, the contracts, and the payments. And we're empowering the student athlete to engage with brands and make money in a very trusted and transparent manner.
Drew, one of the things we talked about recently, one of the most significant and noteworthy things, in college sports, or at least in college basketball, of course, during the tournament, was Roy Williams retiring at North Carolina. And one of the things that people had mentioned, I guess, in the media and everything about one of the reasons for that was because it was sort of entering a new era in basketball, and of course, different sports as well. Obviously talking about transfers, but also mentioning the name, image, and likeness stuff, and maybe the impact that can have on the coaching front. As you project ahead, like you just talked about, what do you feel like the impact's going to be, or what are we talking about maybe a year or two from now, or a little bit further down the road, when it comes to what does this look like from a recruiting standpoint? What does this look like from a coaching standpoint? And maybe what are the differences there that a lot of these coaches may have to adjust to?
Yeah, I think basketball specifically, it's just going to help. It's going to help recruiting. It's going to help Coach K and Roy Williams and Bill Self and all these blue chip programs maybe keep a top high profile recruit for an extra year. There's not going to be that instant demand to just jump into the NBA and go make a buck. Now, granted, if you're a number one pick or a lottery pick, I can understand that, but having the opportunity to make some real money while you're in school and take advantage of your name, image, and likeness while you're in your respective college town or major city in which your university is placed in, that's going to help, and coaches, if they're smart, need to lean into this opportunity. There are amazing branding opportunities and branding potential for specific schools based on where they are geographically located. And student athletes are smart. They understand that. Surely they're going to see what specific positions, whether it's basketball or football or soccer or any sport, are making a lot of money, are getting branding opportunities, and they will be drawn to those opportunities, right? As it stands right now, as it stands today, April 7th, if nothing happens between now and July 1st, Florida is the only state where student athletes will be able to make money off their name, image, and likeness. You better believe that Jimbo Fisher and Dan Mullen and Gus Malzahn at Central Florida, those guys are going to take big time advantage of that in recruiting. And of course, Jimbo Fisher is at Texas A&M. Mike Norvell, of course, is at Florida State now. But they should go out to these recruits and say, hey guys, come to Florida, come to Florida State, come to Central Florida. We will create branding opportunities for you, and you will be able to engage with brands and make money while you're in school.
Yeah, man, so many things I could say here. I found it kind of comical that people take offense at the idea of kids making money off their image, because other people are, right? You see it with middlemen in college basketball. I mean, we've seen the Will Wade stuff, all those things that have made the news. And by the way, nobody's really been punished for that, right? I think that just highlights the impracticality of trying to ward off a market that exists, right? Because these kids and people who handle these kids are getting money. But here's what I want to say, okay? One thing that I found impractical, because I like what you guys are trying to do. I think that there's no reason that you can't let kids capitalize off their name, image, and likeness. And you know, the NCAA's defense of this is they want to protect the kids. I think that's nonsense. And frankly, if a kid makes a bad business deal for himself, that's a live and learn and move on. And we have all benefited from our own poor decisions at times. But here's where I want to go with this, Drew. I think this is coming down the pipe, as you said, and eventually these kids are going to get paid in some way, shape, or form. But I find it a little bit comical that we are trying to restrict the amounts and where it comes from and where it ties in maybe to where a player goes. Because think if we say, okay, you can only make $50,000 or whatever cap we put on that, and it can't be tied on you going to Alabama or Auburn or Georgia or wherever. I'm not singling out any particular schools, but just making those as examples. I think if you try to limit what the players are going to do, another black market for this just pops up and players will get paid under the table another way. How do you see this pragmatically that they can put a cap on what a guy can earn if they try to do something like that? I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it certainly does make sense. You know, I don't think that they're going to be able to put a cap on a hard number of what student athletes can and can't make. I do think that they'll be able to create a code of conduct, per se, like a university code of conduct. You won't be able to have endorsement deals with alcohol brands, tobacco brands, firearms, anything that would violate the school's code of conduct. That certainly makes a lot of sense. But when you're talking about creating that free marketplace, you know, you're going to have to open the floodgates. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how some of these licensing agreements and endorsements with universities play into the companies that reach out to these student athletes. I went to Georgia. Delta provides a lot of advertising inside Sanford Stadium, on the backdrop during Kirby Smart's press conferences. What is stopping United Airlines to talk to JT Daniels, Georgia's starting quarterback this year, from out in California and saying, hey, JT, would you like to be a United Airlines spokesperson? We'll pay you $100,000. What is stopping that? Will there be guardrails between being able to, you know, infringe on a university's big dollar endorsement and what the student athlete can draw for himself? So those are the conversations which legislators are playing out. Those are the situations where they need to figure out how are they going to manage this. But as far as the free marketplace goes, you know, we would love to provide that platform for United Airlines to talk to JT Daniels to sign that contract, have the payment transacted, and then compliance can come see all that. You know, that's what Icon Source is going to provide for these student athletes.
Drew, I know this is more of a general question, but I know it's also one that I guess college sports fans have asked a lot since this discussion really started to ramp up a bit. For just the general fan, the significance or the overall impact, how the sport changes and all this other stuff. I think there are people that kind of look at the potential, doomsday scenario and all this other stuff of it just completely changing the aspect of the game. And I think for some people, they think it's going to be for the worse. But as you look at it, what would you tell those people who kind of are asking, okay, for me as a fan, what can I see if all of this, as we said, moves forward? We kind of discussed the timeline and all that. What do you think is sort of that bigger picture for fans, and maybe just the overall impact for some of them who believe that this could just completely change the game? And as I said, some of them seem to think that it's going to be for the worse. So.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to change the experience for the fan. I think it'll bring the student athletes closer to the fans. Student athletes are going to have more opportunities to connect with brands that fans engage with regularly. Student athletes are going to be more enticed to be active on social media, to start a YouTube channel, to create their online presence. The more engagement that you have with people, that boosts your likability when it comes to branding opportunities. So I think it'll just bring the players, all student athletes, closer to the fans and create more relatable experiences with them. So I think it's a win-win for everybody.
Drew, I thought the point that you made with the state of Florida being ahead of the curve, I mean, that opens up Pandora's box, right? Because I think this is going to be a state-by-state thing. Talk us through the logistics of that, where other states are, who's close, where you see things maybe going through or not, because I think this is going to create just a massive possibility for an equitable playing field unless all states jump on board here.
Yeah, certainly. And I think that was exactly what Governor DeSantis was wanting to do when he signed that bill earlier this year. There is a bill on the House floor in the state of Georgia that's awaiting the governor's signature, a bill in Mississippi that's awaiting the governor's signature to meet that same July 1st date. And I think the NCAA and most all other athletic directors and conference commissioners will push the federal government to make sweeping legislation that covers all 50 states before that July 1st date. The key to amateurism and the key to collegiate sports is providing that common playing field, providing the opportunity for all student athletes to compete in the same manner. If they do that for a name, image, and likeness situation, that will certainly provide the common playing field for all 50 states to play by the same rules. And if not, hey, you know what? They made the bed. Now they have to sleep in it. And for states that get involved early, they're going to see the advantage, and that's good for them.
Drew, you talked earlier about the potential for a partnership between Delta Airlines and Georgia players, just as a hypothetical, right? How does this work between your company and, say, any school out there if this all goes through?
Yeah, so the really unique aspect about Icon Source is that it's already successful at the professional level. That we have over 1,000 professional athletes on our platform, hundreds of brands already on our platform. Agents really love it. It's a tool for them to get more exposure to the depth of their roster to more brands. So the perfect scenario would be a brand, whether they're hyper local, like in Nashville, they're close to Vanderbilt Athletics, or they're in Athens, Georgia, close to Georgia Athletics, and they want to reach out to a student athlete, any student athlete at Georgia. Maybe they've never done that before. Maybe they've never written up an endorsement opportunity for an athlete. They don't even know how to create that opportunity. That's where you come to Icon Source. They sign up, the brand signs up, it's for free. They're going to answer a couple of questions like they're filling out their taxes, a couple of click-through questions. They choose their athlete, who they're interested in based on geographic location, common likes and interests, what sport they play, where they're from. All these things are on the athlete's profile. And when they figure out what athlete they want to engage with, they simply build out that offer. The contract is 75% done due to the proprietary contract wizards that we have, and the athlete can engage with them directly. Hey, here's my rate. Hey, here's what I'm willing to do. I'll do 4 social media posts instead of 5. I'll do 2 stories instead of 4. I'd rather get paid this rate instead of this rate. And then that contract can be signed by both parties on our app or on our web-based platform. We process the payment, the transaction is insured, and everything is done in a trusted and transparent manner for compliance to see.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea, being the middleman to connect people. Give me an example of how that works. I know you've kind of already laid it out, but just kind of give me an example. You don't have to name names where you've connected players with companies and made things work that don't work on their own.
Yeah, certainly. Again, we're already at the professional level. So if a professional athlete's agent is representing him and that agent says, hey, which athlete best fits what we're looking for, that agent says, well, why don't you go to Icon Source? You'll see our entire roster. You guys can answer questions and search based on who you think would resonate best with the endorsement opportunity that you're looking to build out. So once they do that, they get a search result of 4, 5, 6 athletes. They can choose that athlete and see exactly who is going to best fit. They can scrub through all of their demographics that follow them on social media, truly understanding who this opportunity and endorsement is going to reach out to. So once they find that perfect fit, they just reach out to the athlete on the platform, and it's off to the races from there, with the athlete getting to represent themselves, getting to talk directly with the brand and build the opportunity in the best manner.
Drew, I think when we think of this, we're mostly thinking football, right? And probably some basketball players at some places, especially the schools that would pop off the page as the national powers. But do you see this filtering down to baseball or maybe even some other sports that don't get national attention the way football and basketball do?
Oh, surely. I've talked to many student athletes right now, gymnasts with millions of followers on social media, soccer players, whether they're male or female, who have great reach within their respective communities. You go up to the Northeast, lacrosse, out west, water polo. There's 460,000 student athletes in the NCAA. A lot of these kids who maybe aren't playing a high profile revenue sport have amazing followings on social media. Their sports are highly popular in their areas, and they've got that brand recognition that people are looking for in order to reach out to the specific companies, the specific clients that they want to build these endorsement opportunities around. So, I'm really excited for all student athletes because they're really going to see a lot of opportunities that they might not even have thought about in the past.
Last question for you, I suppose. I know you followed the Supreme Court thing last week. Were there any topics or points of discussion or cases to be made that as you watch, you're like, my goodness, I wish this would have come up, or I wish I could have been in the room to bring this topic up, that you think got missed in those conversations?
I thought Alston's lawyers on behalf of the student athletes made great points. Why would you limit what student athletes can be compensated from an educational perspective? It just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. As you know, I was in school from 2007 to 2011. That's a long time ago. 2021, it's a completely different world. I mean, things are changing at a very rapid pace. And I think this is just a great opportunity. And I know this is a long shot, but it's a great opportunity for the NCAA to get with the times, to adapt, to be agile, to move and flow to best position their student athletes for success. So I look forward to the decision. And again, I look forward to this name, image, and likeness opportunity happening because that's going to be great for all student athletes.
Drew, as we close here, I want to ask you one final thing. Let's say this comes about. Let's say this becomes commonplace in all 50 states. What are maybe some ramifications that come out of this that aren't being talked about enough?
Yeah, it's a great question. Again, it's going to be a learning experience. I'm not sure about ramifications. The guardrails that the legislators set up will certainly be things that come up, whether, a tire shop in Alabama wants to pay $50,000 for the same opportunity that a tire shop in Athens, Georgia paid $5,000 for. Those red flags will go up, and then they'll be able to go in and investigate and see if that was legitimate. But this is a learning opportunity. But again, going back to what we said when we first started this interview, it's taking the first step. You have to take the first step and be proactive in order to react to what's going to happen. I think it's going to be overwhelmingly positive. I do not think that it will come without any speed bumps whatsoever, but I think those speed bumps will pale in comparison to the positive impacts that this has.
Drew, you've been a great guest today. As this becomes a thing, which I think it will be, we'd love to have you on in the future. But I want to give you the forum to close here and tell people where they can find you on social media, where they can find your business online, anything like that you'd like to promote or get out there regarding what you do. The floor is yours to advertise that.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate it, guys. It's been a great conversation. You can find me at Drew Butler. We are at Icon Source. My podcast is at Punt and Pass. And most importantly, if any student athletes are listening, go to iconsource.com. I mean, you can go to our collegiate page, see the opportunity that is going to be presented for you. We want to be the place, and we are going to be the place where all brands and student athletes can meet in a trusted and transparent platform. Compliance departments love us. The athletic administrators really appreciate what we've built. And it's an exciting time, so we're looking forward to being on the cutting edge.
Drew, sounds like you're boarding a plane, so I'll let you go do that. And thank you so much for being on with us in the middle of some things going on there. We wish you the best, and again, we'd love to have you on again in the future.
All right, thanks, gentlemen. Have a great one.
All right, you too.
Thanks, Drew.
All right, Blake. Boy, that was an interesting conversation.
Yeah,
and I think this is just going to be fascinating where this heads in the coming years.
Yeah, I mean, it's like he said, I mean, it's you start to look at the timeline, and I mean, it is something that we're going to be talking about. I mean, that's the thing, is this isn't going anywhere. Like, this is, as we said, it's only going to move forward from here. And I think, as we talked about, the impact and those kind of things are going to be the most intriguing parts to me, to see what the impact is, how, different, I mean, like we said, the coaching aspect, the recruiting aspect, all those other things, the adjustments that are going to be made and all that stuff. I think that's going to be pretty fascinating.
Let's dive back into our usual subject matter. We got transfer portals and things like that. To be honest, I haven't even checked to see what broke overnight, but anything newsworthy in the world of transfer portals and coaching moves that happened last night?
I mean, good luck keeping up with it. Not that I'm aware of. Justin Minaya, I know, is one that transferred. I guess that's the significant one. Savion Flagg, who was at Texas A&M, he wound up at Sam Houston State. So other than that, I mean, I don't know that there's a lot noteworthy. I think from now it's just really monitoring, as we said, the transfer portal, seeing what rosters look like, all that other stuff. So yeah, that's going to be the big talking point here moving forward.
Yeah, Vanderbilt women's basketball has made a coaching change. Not a huge surprise given Stephanie White's record. We don't really cover women's hoops, but that was a kind of a big thing here locally in the Nashville area yesterday. Of course, we had baseball going off last night. South Carolina lost an extra inning game to North Carolina. I guess that was the headliner. And, of course, we'll get back to baseball on the Thursday show. But to that, we debuted player rankings this morning. I put out a hitter rankings, our first iteration of that, having pitchers coming probably later today. So that's going to be fun and exciting. And now I feel like we can kind of go full bore baseball with basketball action out of the table. And I think this is going to be a lot of fun.
Yep, lots to discuss. And as you said, you can find everything over at southeastern14.com. And be sure to follow us on Twitter at 14 Southeastern for all of that. So, yeah, lots of great stuff coming on the way.
All right, he's Blake Lovell. I'm Chris Lee. Thank you to Drew Butler for Icon Source for appearing on our show today. We'll be back with the Thursday edition as usual tomorrow morning. Thank you for listening to the 14 podcast. We will catch you again very soon.